Hello, everyone. We are now moving into part 2 of the series, where we are coming together to reflect and integrate our experience of this global pandemic so that we can move past the cycle from a place of healing and coherency. Today, our discussion is going to be focused on grief and on how our body can process grief from a Chinese medicine perspective. We will also be learning a self-acupuncture practice to support us in processing and letting go of that grief. As our guest today will remind us, the sharing of our grief with others, both personal and collective grief, is in and of itself healing, because grief truly is best processed in community. So today our guest is Dr. Lacey Dupre. Dr. Lacey Dupre helps visionaries and compassionate entrepreneurs become leader healers by processing through the disease that keeps them small, sick, and stuck using self-acupuncture. She specializes in chronic anxiety, fatigue, and stress, as well as getting you into what she calls radical reception, which is in part letting go of your internal resistances, having holy conversations with your higher self and the universe, plus awakening to your inner genius. She is the founder of the Water Institute, and that's WADR, which stands for We Are Divine Rising, where she mentors in mind, body, soul medicine, which pairs traditional Taoist medicine with the latest in science and research. She also teaches self-acupuncture for all, using the time-tested traditional modalities of Chinese medicine and the Teishin, which is a self-acupuncture tool that she has handcrafted herself. And so I'm really, really excited to be able to share this conversation I had with Dr. Lacey Dupre. It truly is filled with insights and perspectives and very, very practical tools for us to work with as we process grief, and not only pertaining to the pandemic, but in general, grief, And so I am really, really happy to be able to share and to come together in this way. So let's get started.
Thank you so much for collecting all of us here and for sharing this resource, because it's very much needed. We need to talk about these somewhat taboo topics. We're not, we don't have a lot of invitation to address this, right? So I'm so very grateful for you for collecting us here. And we certainly know that humans cannot grieve alone, right? And so that's another facet of this is, the pandemic put us into isolation. And to grieve, it needs to be done, and it's best done in community. That is where we are most vulnerable. Our bodies and our minds want to put us alone when we're in grief, right? And this sharing of collective grief and experience is our medicine right now. And so we're looking at this reopening kind of period, right? This ascent and this period of collective grief. And we may feel like we're looking at it right now sort of in a rearview mirror, because we're told like, oh, we're reopening. And I think that's when the grief comes up. When you're in something, you're surviving, right? And there's not too much time to process it, even though this period was quite extensive, right? But this notion of, okay, now I have this time and space, but where is the initiation? Where is the ritual around it? And is it acknowledged what we've lost, right? Because we've lost many things, right? Besides, timelines and plans and major events, we might have lost people, relationships, and our sense of where we stand in the world and what we're doing, even all these things. And some of us aren't ready to reopen and want to go back. And what is reopening and what's going on, right? There's so much fear and unknown, and that's always bound up with grief. And this sense of returning to normal, it's just so harmful because you know we've this society has constructed this sense of normalcy. It's a construct of a patriarchal society, right? That does not acknowledge and honor you, your intricacies, your mental health, your body, your flesh, nor your compassion. So this sense of returning to normal is completely self-defeating, right? Which is why we don't even know how to wrap our minds and our hearts around it, right? So rather we can move, we can move into this cycle, into these circles, and progress towards healing, right? And co-create a culture that we do feel like we belong in. And purpose can serve as a guiding light through grief, and I'll get into purpose in a little while. But I wanted to first introduce a little bit of Chinese medicine into this talk, because I'm going to share some self acupuncture at the end. And it's been what's helped me the most and what's helped my clients and patients the most in processing grief is this self acupuncture that I teach, right? So what are the 5 stages of grief? They're denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, right? And I'm sure we can all relate to these stages. So in Chinese medicine, we also have stages, our phases. And some people say elements, but phase is the more appropriate term for fire, earth, metal, water, wood, right? Other traditional medicine systems have similar ones, right? So, and we go through them, like in our lifetime, but also monthly, seasonally, annually, and sometimes daily, right? You can experience these emotions and you're just feeling all the feels or not, right? And you're in a period of numbness, right? And then in and out of all these different phases, because all the phases have emotional components as well. And so as all things are fractal, I also see each of these stages mapped out within the phases of grief. So denial is the fire realm, and fire is associated with anger, and that's the heart. And anger is associated with the wood phase, which is anger, and is associated with the liver. And bargaining is associated with earth. This is the realm of the spleen and the stomach, and it's about self-nurturing and nourishment. Despair is the metal phase, which is associated with grief. And the organs there are the lungs and the large intestine, primarily the lungs. And acceptance is water. And water is associated with the kidneys and with fear and moving through fear, because that is the root of it, right? So we can see how we cycle through these phases in our own time, in our own way. And traditionally, like I said, the metal phase is associated with grief. And I'll go over that a bit when I teach self acupuncture for grief, a self acupuncture point for grief. But first, I want to take a look at how we awaken to post traumatic growth. And it's, through acceptance and acknowledgement and vulnerability, right? And so when you share and express your grief, and when you connect, that's when you can awaken your courage within grief. And there are some practical ways to do this, because I mean, that is said. It is so much easier said than done, right? Especially when we're feeling a tremendous amount of pain from our loss. So the first thing is simply accept and feel it, and literally just feel it, right? It's a divine form of acceptance. It's true vulnerability. And when we hold in our emotions, then they turn into they turn into stagnations, right, within the body. And we know that this is the root of all dis-ease, of all chronic illness. Um, we have it's when we experience trauma or grief, it gets lodged in the body. And science research, I mean, it says it gets lodged in the fascia. We know it gets lodged in the subtle body. And we've also seen, we know collectively in our wisdom, but through modern research, that it's held back that it's held in the body from generations before us, right? Through epigenetic studies and that sort of research, that we know that this ancestral trauma that we've had the wisdom of understanding for and feeling for millennia is 100% real, right? So we're holding on to all this. So part of this feeling and accepting it is this letting go, right? And we'll get into the letting go process, and as that relates to the lungs and the large intestine, because we are fully capable of of processing trauma. As hard as it is, we can receive it, accept it, feel it, and let it go, right? So let's move into the second point, which is movement. So movement is this attempt to release what's lodged and stuck in the body, right? And animals do it, and we can do it. You've seen, in traditional cultures, shaking, dancing, vibrating, movement that is releasing not only ancestral trauma, but something that you're experiencing in the moment, or your grief, or collective grief, right? So I invite you to cry, to scream into a pillow, scream underwater, dance, shake, get yourself a Spotify playlist, and make that, just a tiny ritual of shaking it out. I promise it helps a lot. Nothing that I'm sharing here is without potency. Even if it might seem silly to you and like, that's not going to work, I promise it works. So, third is, I wanted to talk about purpose. This notion of a guiding light through trauma, right? And you're thinking, I don't know what the hell my purpose is, or if I'm in such pain, I can't even think about that. I can't see it. So I invite you to share in a collective purpose with me, and that is to be connected and to be of service. So to be connected and to be of service, that can be our purpose, right? It is such a beautiful purpose, and I'm honored to share that purpose with you. And it's with this longer view of healing the earth, of earth healing, right? Because we are mirrors of the universe. So if you're doing your purpose in healing your trauma and your grief, and I'm doing that, the earth feels it. And we are collectively healing one another through this connection and service to one another and the earth, which we know direly needs it. So the fourth thing I'd like to share is that is a continuation of this thought that we are nature. Um, the greatest legacy that we have to endure is our society's um, belief, that's now part of our subconscious belief, that we are disconnected from nature, and this great separation, right? It causes us so much suffering, and it's part of grief. It's part of the grief that, as we become adults, we experience, because of again, the society that we live in. And we know that nature heals all, right? She gets to work and repairs after a trauma, right? The seeds that sprout on a cliffside after a terrible landslide, that she weaves herself back together to where she's lush and full and green again, right? We see that. And so when we need healing, we must go to her, right? And this can help soothe this sense of grief and ease, and make sense of loss and death and grief. She she holds the answer, right? And you just need to um, maybe make a ritual, a daily, 15 minutes outside,
Yeah.
connect with the tree, go for a walk. Very simple, and yeah, very soothing.
One thing that's been really that I think it's really valuable for us to just recognize that all it takes is to actually do it. Doesn't require much, doesn't have to be elaborate, doesn't have to be somebody came up with and you found it comes from you, and you do it with the assistance of life and nature, and it's simplicity, right? Like
Exactly.
simplicity is the most potent form of magic.
Right.
Yeah.
And when we that's exactly it. And when we intellectualize something and make it more complex, because maybe our subconscious training is about, if I work harder, it'll be more effective, right? And we know that's not true. It's like when you try to make more money because you want to work harder. I mean, you don't want to work harder, but you think that's the only way. It's the same with grief and with all these emotional stagnations, right? You you're exactly right. It's about being you, being with yourself, and it's very simple. So if we just take the tiny actions, right, to do that for ourselves, the answers will come, and the ease will come, and the sense of okayness, because we know that it's okay to not be okay, and then to also feel okay, to give yourself permission to also feel okay. And I like this word okayness. It was taught to me by a teacher of mine, Sokni Rinpoche, who talks about this notion of okayness, right? It's not, you know exuberance or rich and famous or even happiness. It's this sense of okayness, and it's very grounding, and very much, to me, it gives me a sense of, like, I can accomplish that, right? I can be the mother I want to be. I can be the leader in my life, right?
There's a spaciousness in it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Thanks
like
for
that
sharing that. Yeah.
switching. All right. So let's get into a little bit of self acupuncture, because that's what I teach. That's what I do. And so we're just gonna learn a point today, because when we're in grief, it's already very much overcomplicated. So I make something called a teishin. It is a tool. It's the first acupuncture tool that I've redesigned, and put a gemstone in it. So I use, this is the point we're going to learn today. I use this with my patients and clients, but today we're just going to be using our most beautiful tools that we have, which is our fingertips, right? Um, and we're going to be using the metal finger, which is the pointer finger. This is connected to your large intestine. And we're going to go to a point that is right here. So, this on the face, I teach facial acupuncture a lot. So, these are the lungs, the lobes of your lungs on your face. So, this is the microcosm of the macrocosm, right? These lines, these smile lines, are your large intestines. Okay, those are the two organs that are the metal organs that we're working to open when we're working with grief, the lungs and large intestines. So this point, that's where the smile line hits this bottom area of these lungs. So it's this corner of the nose here. That is the point that we're going to be working with today, right? So I'm going to read a little bit as we use this point to open. and expand our capacity to receive, which is the lungs. And then the large intestines, what do is they poop, right? They let go. So it's this
Mm.
vulnerable reception and then this letting go, right? And that's the energetics of these two organs, and that's what we do when we are processing grief, right? So what I'd like you to do is first press here, and then as we're breathing together, and I'll teach you the breath, you're going to alternate very gently between a pressing and like a pulling away, pressing and pulling away. And you really get this sense of chi movement. And the breath work that we're going to do is a Taoist, a very simple Taoist breath work called the microcosmic orbit breath. And all it is you simply inhale up the back of your spine, at the top of your head, and then exhale down the front of your spine, diving into your pelvic bowl, and then breathing back. Inhale up the sacrum, up the spine, up the back of the neck, into the head, and then exhaling down the whole front midline. So we're connecting these two. There's a channel that goes up your midline and the back, and the channel that goes midline down the front. We're connecting this, which is the microcosmic orbit within, because we are a mirror of the orbits around us, right? In the universe and in our solar system. So it's this gentle breath work within as we are breathing into this very potent point here. Inhale up the spine, exhale down the front. And I'm going to read you just a little bit as you're breathing. So, metal is this alchemical phase and transforms and transmutes. And smell is the sense of the metal phase and alters our mental state and our soul. And to smell is a spiritual exercise. So, this point increases the ability to receive new experience. Fragrance can evoke memories of the past and receive lessons and old experiences without reliving the past. The sense of smell is one of the most important ways in which the reality of heaven is transmitted to earth. Our sense of smell is instinctual and ties us to our survival and animal nature. The olfactory nerve terminates in the limbic brain, and this area is related to our emotions. We can use this point to renew and digest life and process grief, even when it appears that life has lost its essential value. Fragrance is not just an odor, but an energetic essence. When our metal is in balance, we can distinguish the essential from the non essential and what we allow in. It's never all roses, and presence with gratitude are powerful and can aid us in navigating foul weather. So you can just release on your next exhale and notice that you do feel a sense of openness
Mm.
and this connection to your own chi. Feeling chi is our birthright. You don't have to go to school for this. And using a little bit of maybe like herbs or essential oil here as you're doing this practice. We know that essential oil, that aromatherapy, right, greatly helps with this with our process of grief. And yeah, so I hope that you enjoy this very simple practice, and I love sharing. Um, this space with you and self acupuncture practices, and I'd like to invite you to a free community gathering that I'm having, because this expressing grief is not easy, right? And I wanted to have a space where my hope is that it'll be a bit easier for you to feel held. And it's called a grief cafe. And it's modeled after the death cafes. And there's no experts here, there's no guidance, there's no therapy, there's no advice. We're just coming together in a circle on Zoom to talk about our loss, what we have lost, our experience with grief, and because we heal in community, and it's that simple, right? So I hope you can come, and I invite everyone here to come. It's the first one is July 21st, Wednesday.
Next
uh,
Wednesday.
yeah, next Wednesday. It's 2 o'clock Pacific time, 4 p.m. Central time. Yeah. So, and if I'll probably be doing a couple of them because I think they're needed, right? If you can't make that one,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, thank you so much for creating this space.
Yeah, and I'll put the link to sign up for that and for the rest of her information in the notes. But thank you. Thank you. This was so helpful. I'm still feeling the effects of that pressure point.
Good.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for everything that you brought.
Thank you too, and I'll see you soon.
Yes.
Bye.